Von Miller, 8 Pro Bowls, 138.5 career sacks. The active sack leader in the entire NFL, still without a team, and ESPN just said Chicago is his best destination. But before you get too excited, I'm going to break down exactly why this move could be a mistake for Halas Hall, and the numbers are going to surprise you because while that conversation is playing out, Ryan Poles already moved in silence and stole from the Rams, the same team that knocked Chicago out in overtime in the divisional round, their most coveted player in the entire draft. 4 picks stood between Los Angeles and getting their guy. 4, bear down, and what no Navy and Orange fan has on their radar yet is what is happening in Springfield right now. There is a deadline on May 31st, and if that legislation does not move before that date, the Monsters of the Midway could end up playing in Indiana. That is not an exaggeration. That is the real scenario on the table today. All of that starting right now. Von Miller, 8 Pro Bowls, 138.5 career sacks, the all-time leader in sacks among active NFL players, and he is still out there. Still unsigned, and ESPN just said the Bears are his best landing spot. Let that breathe for a second. ESPN's Matt Bowen dropped this analysis today, telling everyone that Chicago is the best fit for Miller at this stage of free agency. And honestly, when you read through the arguments, you cannot say he's wrong because the logic is airtight. Here's the context. The Bears finished second to last in pass rush win rate last season. 29%, that's almost the bottom of the barrel. And in pressure percentage, 4th worst in the entire league at 28%. That is not a small problem. That is a problem that could cost Caleb Williams an entire season if it doesn't get fixed. Dennis Allen knows he has to fix it. The defensive coordinator himself said it publicly. He has to be a better coach in 2026. Look, when was the last time you heard a coordinator say that out loud? I've got respect for Allen just for that, but respect doesn't stop blitzes. You need talent. Now, the real question, what do the Bears actually have in that edge rusher room outside of Montez Sweat? Dayo Odeyingbo coming back from an Achilles tear. Shamar Turner coming back from a torn ACL. Austin Booker flashing some promise, but nothing locked in yet. That's what they've got. A room full of question marks and a coordinator who promised to do better. And that is exactly where Von Miller fits perfectly. Because what people don't understand about Miller is that he doesn't need to be an every down player anymore. That's in the past. What he is right now is an elite designated pass rusher. The kind of piece you bring in on 3rd and long, who generates pressure when you need it most, who takes heat off Sweat because the other team cannot ignore a man with 138 career sacks. Last season with the Washington Commanders, he played just 37% of the defensive snaps, 37, and he still finished with 9 sacks, 9. That number would have ranked 2nd on the Bears behind Sweat. You understand what that means? On less than half the available snaps, Miller would match or outperform every other edge rusher they currently have on the roster, and 36 pressures on top of that. Not just sacks, pressures. The stuff that disrupts the quarterback's timing, that forces quick decisions, that creates the interceptions the secondary is supposed to make. Y'all don't understand how important that number is. The year before that, 6 sacks in 13 games with Buffalo. This man is not done. He is operating in pure efficiency mode. Now, the money situation. The Bears have roughly $11.18 million in cap space for 2026. They've still got unsigned draft picks, including first-rounder Dylan Thieneman, so the real available space is tighter than it looks. But spot rack projects, Miller will sign for around $5.8 million on a 1-year deal. Last season, he signed for $6.1 million guaranteed with Washington. That's manageable. That fits. Look, I could be wrong about this, but when you analyze the numbers, the risk is low and the upside is massive. A veteran who has won 2 Super Bowls, who already knows how to operate as a rotational piece, who's not going to demand the moon on a contract, and who adds mentorship and championship presence to a room where Austin Booker, Shamar Turner, and Dayo Odeyingbo are still trying to find their identities. The intangibles matter too, fam. 2 championships. That mentality Miller would bring into a locker room on a Bears team that is literally trying to make that championship leap in 2026. You can't put a price on that. Why hasn't it happened yet? That's the real question. And the answer seems to be the Bears want to see how OTAs go first. They want to evaluate their guys. If Booker looks sharp, If there are signs of life in that room, maybe they ride with what they've got. But if they get to training camp and still look just as vulnerable on the edge, the name Von Miller is going to echo very loudly through the halls at Halas Hall. Cam Jordan is another option that makes sense. Jordan has history with Dennis Allen going back to their New Orleans days. That connection is real, but Miller has the more recent production and the clearer role fit. And listen, the trade market can move between OTAs and Camp 2. There was interest in Max Crosby earlier this offseason, but the price was too high. Will that price come down? Will another option emerge? Those conversations aren't dead yet. What I do know is this: if the Bears go into 2026 with the same pass rush they had in 2025 and Caleb Williams is absorbing hits he should never be taking, that conversation about why they didn't sign Von Miller is going to be deafening come November. Okay, but hold on, bro, because while we're talking about what's still missing, we need to talk about what the Bears already did in the draft, and it turns out they straight up swiped a very coveted piece from not one, but two high-profile rivals. Logan Jones, center Iowa, second-round pick number 57, the replacement for Drew Dalman, who abruptly retired and left the Bears without their starting center with 2 years still on his $42 million contract. After the dust settled on draft weekend, something fascinating came out. Jones's high school coach at Lewis Central in Iowa got on the CHGO Bears podcast and revealed that the Los Angeles Rams sent two people to Iowa to sit down with coaches for 2 full hours before the draft. 2 hours. Do you know what it means to send 2 scouts on a trip to Iowa to interrogate high school coaches for 2 hours? That means the Rams wanted Logan Jones badly, and the Bears took him at pick 57. The Rams were on the clock at pick 61, 4 picks apart. Man, that is the closest you can get to losing something without actually losing it. But the story doesn't stop there. Ravens GM Eric DeCosta also admitted publicly after the draft that Jones was one of his 2 favorite centers in the entire class, and that he had seriously considered trading up in the 3rd round to get him if he was still available. I was sort of prepared to think about potentially going from 80 up a little bit in the 3rd to get one of those guys if they were there, DeCosta said. The Ravens needed to replace Tyler Linderbaum, who left for Las Vegas in free agency, and Logan Jones was the natural successor, having been the starter at Iowa before Linderbaum got there. The fact that the successor to the successor at Iowa ended up in Chicago while the Ravens and Rams both went home empty-handed, that's something. And here's the angle that I love. The Rams are the team that bounced the Bears from the playoffs in the divisional round, 20-17 in overtime. Painful loss. And the only reason the Bears ended up picking before the Rams in the 2nd round is precisely because the Rams went further in the playoffs. So that overtime loss cost Chicago a draft slot, and they turned around and used that slot to take the Rams' favorite player right off the board. That right there, fam, is some sweet, sweet karma from the Windy City. For the Bears, Jones comes in to fill a critical gap. Dalman was a Pro Bowler. His retirement was a shock. And instead of panicking, Ryan Poles identified the most wanted player at the position in the entire draft. A 4-year starter at one of the most respected offensive line programs in the country, and locked him up just 4 picks before the Rams could get to him. That is scouting. That is preparation. And yes, there is also a little bit of delicious karma sprinkled on top. And to close out today, we have to touch on the story that's been simmering in the background of everything surrounding this franchise. Where exactly are the Bears going to be playing football for the next 40 years? Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker spoke up today and said he expects the state legislature to pass the mega projects bill before the end of the spring session, with a deadline of May 31st, but he also used the moment to take a direct shot at Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who made a last-minute push in Springfield to try to keep the Bears inside city limits. Pritzker's words were blunt. 3 years in, and the mayor still has no plan, and on a factual level, he's not entirely wrong about that. Here's where things actually stand. The Bears already own the land at the former Arlington International Racecourse in Arlington Heights. Purchased back in 2023, they're also looking at a site in Hammond, Indiana, after Indiana lawmakers passed legislation to help build a stadium across the border. And the city of Chicago keeps pushing for a publicly owned domed stadium near Soldier Field. But that proposal has been stuck in Springfield for 2 years with no real momentum. The clock is ticking. May 31st is the deadline. If nothing passes, the Hammond, Indiana conversation gets a whole lot louder. For Bears fans, this is not abstract. This is the question of whether your kids are going to watch the Bears in a modern, domed, 21st century stadium or whether we're going to keep having this same circular conversation in 2028. The city of Chicago has a history with this franchise that goes back to George Halas himself. That legacy should not end up in Indiana, but politics doesn't always respect history. What's clear is that the Bears organization wants certainty. 40 years of property tax clarity so they can actually plan and build. Until that certainty arrives, the clock keeps running. 3 stories, one common thread. The Bears are on the edge of something massive, and every single decision made in the next few weeks is going to matter. Von Miller still unsigned, Logan Jones arriving to anchor the offensive line, and a stadium situation that still needs a home. This is the part of the offseason where an organization's character gets defined, and I trust that Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, and Dennis Allen are locked in on all of it. But fam, I need to know what you think. Do you sign Von Miller or do you roll with the guys already on the roster and trust the process? That debate belongs in the comments, and I want to read every single one. If this breakdown hit different, that like means everything. And if you're not part of this community yet, bear down, baby. See you in the next one.